In this video, we'll talk about how to factor the trinomial completely. Notice it's a trinomial. Tri means three. There are 1, 2, 3 terms. Remember, terms are separated by plus and minus signs. And factor really means to break it apart. So think about an analogy using Legos, right? Let's pretend you have a set of Legos that are all on the floor, and you build the Legos into a robot, right? The robot is like this trinomial. It's sort of all put together. To factor means to break things apart into their pieces. So imagine taking the robot apart and having the pieces spread all over the floor again, right? In both cases, we never lose any of the Lego pieces, right? They're always all there. It's just they're in different forms. And we'll see later on in the class, we'll do a lot more factoring practice, that having something in factored form is sometimes an easier version of the expression to work with. Okay, so that's why we need to do it. All right, so the first thing we do when we factor is we always look to take out the greatest common factor from the terms available. Now, there may not be a greatest common factor, right? If I look at the numbers like 3, -16, and 5, I can't take anything out other than a 1, right? So that doesn't really help me. Also, if I look at the variables, I can't really take anything out because the 5 is a constant term. There's no x there. So looking to take out the greatest common factor, I can't really do anything about it. So now I'm going to break this into two binomials. And here's where it's sort of like a puzzle, right? I have to think, if I were to distribute two binomials, I would distribute the first term to this first term. So these two first terms have to multiply to 3x squared. And there's really not a lot of options, like what multiplies to 3x squared? I can't really think of anything except 3x and x, okay? And we're not gonna use fractions. We're gonna keep it simple using whole numbers. Okay, now, the other thing I need to think about is, if I multiply the last two terms, right? Those two terms are going to have to multiply to +5. So again, you need to think, what are some factors that multiply to +5? Well, 5 and 1, but also I want to think about -5 and -1. All right, now why do I want to include that? A negative times a negative is a positive, but if I look at my middle term and realize that's negative, I'm going to need some negative numbers here. So now I need the -5 and the -1, and this is really where you have to think strategically or sort of guess and check. Where do I put the -5? Here or here, right? Well, if I put the -5 here, I know I'm going to have to multiply 3x times -5. That's going to get me -15, which is pretty close to my middle term. So I'm going to put the -5 here and the -1 here. Okay. Now you may be thinking, well, how do I know if this is the right answer? What you're going to do is carefully distribute the left binomial to the right. So 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times -5 is -15x. -1 times x is -1x. -1 times -5 is +5. Remember to combine like terms. And I get 3x squared minus 16x plus 5. So I have in fact factored correctly. Now, this is a really good thing to do, because if you were to have inadvertently, messed up the order of the -1 and the -5, you would have distributed and realized, wait a minute, right? -3x, and this is going to be -5x. That would have added to -8x, and that would have not been the correct middle term. I hope that helped, and don't worry, we will practice a lot more factoring in the weeks to come.